unbelievable. I mean, how can a human being do what she did to my son?
In January of 2003, a quiet Texas suburb was shaken to its core. Behind the white picket fences and warm glow of family portraits, something unthinkable happened. Her name was Susan Lucille Wright. She was 30 years old, a mother of two, a wife, and by all appearances, the portrait of domestic grace. But beneath the gentle smiles, beneath the carefully folded laundry and polite church greetings, was a woman silently unraveling. Susan grew up in Houston, a child of a modest, hard-working family. Her mother, gentle but fearful of confrontation. Her father, distant and often gone. The kind of home where pain was swallowed, not spoken. She learned early to smile through storms. At 23, she met Jeff Wright. Tall, handsome, charismatic, he could make a room light up with laughter. He called her Susie Q. He told her she was special, that he'd take care of her. And she believed him. They married quickly. Within a year, they had their first child, a boy, Bradley. Then a girl, Kaylee. To neighbors, they were picture perfect, the young couple chasing the American dream. But inside the walls of their tidy home, reality was different. Jeff's temper came in waves, sometimes subtle, sometimes explosive. He'd slam a door, shout over spilled milk, then apologize with flowers. Love, apology, control. It was a cycle that confused her heart and silenced her spirit. There's something chilling about living beside the man you once loved and feeling like a stranger in your own home. By 2003, she was exhausted, emotionally, mentally, physically. Her bruises faded faster than her fear. Her friends noticed she'd grown quieter. Her mother asked once, "Susan, is Jeff treating you right?" She smiled. "Of course, Mom." She wanted to believe it. If you've ever known a woman who smiled through her pain, then you'll understand why this story matters. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, please subscribe, like, and share, because truth has a way of saving others before it's too late. The cracks deepened. Jeff stayed out late. When he came home, he smelled of alcohol, sometimes perfume that wasn't hers. He'd accuse her of nagging, of ruining his life, of being ungrateful. She hid the bruises beneath long sleeves, the tears behind a steady voice. Yet at night, she'd lay awake wondering if the man she'd married was slowly disappearing into someone else. Then, one evening, her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "He was with me last night. You deserve better." Her heart dropped. The message was simple, but it changed everything. In the days that followed, she confronted him. Jeff laughed it off. "You're paranoid, Susie. You're lucky I even come home to you." Neighbors would later recall hearing arguments through the walls, muffled cries, thuds, the sound of things breaking. She stopped answering calls. The children watched quietly from the hallway. She looked in the mirror one night and whispered, "Who am I becoming?" The mirror doesn't lie. It just shows what the soul is too afraid to say. She was breaking. And on the night of January 13th, 2003, everything inside her finally snapped. It was cold, unusually so for Houston. The children were asleep. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Jeff had been drinking again. They argued. Words became shouts, shouts became shoves. He called her worthless. She begged him to stop. He laughed. Then something changed. He lunged toward her, and the fear she'd buried for years erupted. What happened next would haunt her forever. Prosecutors would later say she lured him to bed, tied him with rope, and stabbed him 193 times. Susan would say she snapped, terrified, fighting back after years of control and pain. The truth? Somewhere between fear and fury. In the stillness that followed, she stood over him, shaking, covered in blood. Her breath came in gasps. The knife clattered to the floor. The man she once loved lay still. Silence. Just the sound of her heartbeat. Wild, uneven, breaking. Then came the panic. She dragged the body to the backyard, her mind blank, her soul hollow. She dug, cried, dug again, whispering, "I'm sorry, Jeff. I'm sorry." As she shoveled dirt over him, the wind howled through the trees. For a split second, she thought she heard a sound, a faint groan, and she froze. But it was only her guilt echoing back. By dawn, the hole was filled, the nightmare buried, or so she thought. The next morning, the house smelled of bleach. The sheets were gone. Susan stared at the walls, at the tiny handprints of her children, at the bed she could no longer bear to touch. Neighbors grew suspicious. Jeff's family called repeatedly. "Where's Jeff?" they asked. She lied. "He went away for a few days. We had a fight." But the lies trembled on her lips. A week later, Jeff's father appeared at her door, furious. He searched the backyard. The family dog began digging near the patio and then stopped, sniffing at something dark beneath the soil. An arm. Susan fell to her knees. The sound that escaped her wasn't human. Part sob, part scream. The illusion was over. When the police arrived, she didn't resist. She was calm, almost detached. "I did it. I couldn't stop." The neighbors watched as she was led away in handcuffs. The young mother they thought they knew, now accused of murder. In that moment, Susan's world collapsed. Her children were taken. Her name became a headline. And the home that once held her dreams became a crime scene. The sound of sirens faded into the wind, and with it, the last echo of the life she'd known. Houston, 2004. The courtroom was packed. Cameras flashed. The prosecution painted her as a manipulative seductress, cold, calculating, capable of murder. In one unforgettable moment, the prosecutor dragged a bed into court, tied a man to it, and mimicked the stabbing. 1, 2, 3, all the way to 193. The crowd gasped. Susan sat motionless, tears rolling down her face. Her attorney argued that Jeff had been abusive, that the murder wasn't planned but the breaking point of a battered wife. But Jeff's family stood in the front row, shaking their heads. His mother sobbed, "She's lying." His brother whispered, "She destroyed him." The media swarmed. Headlines called her the blue-eyed butcher. Her name became synonymous with madness. Each testimony cut deeper. Former friends, co-workers, even relatives taking sides. She was no longer Susan, the mother or wife. She was Susan, the monster. There's no lonelier place than sitting in a courtroom where every face looks at you and sees a villain. After days of testimony, the jury retired to deliberate. Susan sat alone at the defense table, hands trembling, whispering to herself, "Please, God, just let them understand." The courtroom doors closed behind the jury. Silence. Then the waiting began. 5 hours later, the jury returned. The verdict: guilty of murder. Susan's face crumpled. The words felt like the final blow in a life already shattered. The judge's gavel struck, 25 years in prison. Her mother sobbed quietly in the back row. Jeff's family sighed in relief. Reporters rushed to the exits. Susan stood motionless as deputies cuffed her. She whispered, "Tell my children I love them." In the months that followed, she appealed. The sentence was reduced to 20 years, but the damage was done. Her children, Bradley and Kaylee, were placed with Jeff's family. They would grow up without her. Inside her cell, Susan stared at the small barred window, the world beyond, unreachable. She had lost everything: freedom, family, dignity, identity. But sometimes losing everything becomes the only way to find yourself again. One night, as the prison lights flickered off, she sat on her bunk and whispered, "I will reclaim my voice." That night marked the beginning of her slow, painful rebirth. Prison is not just metal and walls, it's silence, judgment, and ghosts that never leave. Susan lived through them all. At first, she avoided others. Some inmates called her Blue Eyes. Others hated her for what she'd done. She spent hours in the library, reading, writing, staring at blank pages until her tears left stains. She attended therapy, at first refusing to speak. But over time, words began to flow, stories of fear, pain, confusion. For the first time, she admitted, "I was afraid of him, but I also loved him, and I hate myself for both." Years passed, birthdays forgotten, seasons blurred. Letters from her children stopped coming. The silence hurt more than any sentence. And yet, small acts of grace appeared. A prison counselor who believed her, a Bible study group that reminded her of forgiveness, a fellow inmate who told her, "You're not what you did." Parole hearings came and went, denied, delayed. Each rejection chipped at her hope. Still, she endured. Finally, in 2020, 17 years after that night, the board voted yes. She was granted parole. On December 30th, 2020, Susan Wright stepped out of prison. The gates clanged shut behind her, and for the first time in years, the air tasted like freedom. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, God." Freedom, however, came with chains of its own. Susan was released under strict parole, GPS monitoring, curfews, therapy sessions. She couldn't leave Texas. She lived quietly, avoiding cameras, crowds, old friends. The world remembered her name, but not her story. Reporters tried to find her. Neighbors whispered. Some said she didn't deserve another chance. But Susan wasn't chasing forgiveness. She was chasing peace. She reached out to her children, now grown. Whether they responded or not, she wrote letters, each ending with, "I love you. No matter what they say about me, that will never change." She began volunteering in quiet circles, domestic abuse awareness programs, survivor networks. She rarely spoke about herself, only about fear and how silence can kill faster than violence. She learned that redemption isn't a public spectacle, it's a private choice. Years later, she still wakes up at night to echoes of that January evening, but she doesn't hide from them anymore. She faces them with trembling hands and a wounded but determined heart. In a world that judged her by one act, Susan chose to live by one truth, that broken people can still seek light. Her story is not of justification, but of transformation. She lost everything, her husband, her freedom, her children, but found the courage to face what most of us run from, ourselves. And maybe that's what justice really is. Not revenge, not punishment, but the moment a soul decides to tell the truth and live it. Susan Lucille Wright was released on parole December 30th, 2020. She continues to live quietly in Texas, focusing on healing and awareness for survivors of domestic abuse. Thank you for watching. Please share, like, and subscribe.